on something else. The president said in his interview, and let me just read the quote with regard to the stimulus package and what kind of package he thought was appropriate to jumpstart this economy. He said exactly this: it has no earmarks. We're going to be trimming out things that are not relevant to putting people back to work right now. I couldn't agree with that more. He also said, I've done extraordinary outreach, I think, to Republicans because they have some good ideas, and I want to make sure those ideas are incorporated. Well, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly where we need to end up. Of course, that's not where we are right now. And I know the Democratic leadership is going down to the White House tonight. I hope he can get through to them that the way to build this package is indeed to do it on a bipartisan basis, which doesn't mean just talking to us, but including ideas that we think would work. And also, we need to make sure that we're not borrowing money to spend on projects that are not going to stimulate the economy. Unfortunately, at least to this point, it appears the Democratic leadership has not gotten the memo, or the message, if you will, from the president. We believe, Republicans, that a stimulus bill must fix the main problem first, and that's housing. That's how all of this began. We think you ought to go right at housing first, and we have already indicated that we think this 4% mortgage proposal, which was developed by Glenn Hubbard, is something that can work and make a difference. That'll be a part of whatever we offer on the floor. We also think the second part of a package that will actually do the job, that is timely, temporary, and targeted, would put money back in people's hands directly. And we've suggested focusing on the two lower tax rates for income taxpayers up to $65,000 a year, lower the 10% rate to 5%, the 15% rate to 10%. Before you even begin to ask me, I'm going to tell you I don't have any comments to make on the Daschle matter, the Gregg matter. I know that's on everybody's mind. I've already addressed both of those and don't have anything more to add on either today. You get the drift. I'd really like to talk about the stimulus proposal, where it needs to head and where it may end up. Who'd like to lead off? Yeah.
Senator McConnell, you've got some procedural options since all of this is emergency money. Are you going to try to knock some of it out using your numbers and points of order?
Well, I'm not going to indicate what amendments we might offer or what procedural techniques we may employ, but just let me say, nobody that I know of is trying to keep a package from passing. You know, we're not trying to prevent a package from passing. We're trying to reform it, reformulate it, put it in a different place. The package that most of my members would support would be dramatically different from what passed the House and, frankly, dramatically different from what we currently see out of the Finance Committee and the Appropriations Committee. And I've indicated where we think it ought to go. Fix housing first, tax relief for middle and low-income taxpayers that put money back in their pockets immediately. Yeah.
Mr. Luter, if you should get progress on housing, on tax relief, would you also require changes on the spending part, some of the entitlements?
Well, look, I don't think it's a great idea to use a bill that's supposed to be timely, temporary, and targeted to actually make entitlement permanent spending worse. I mean, why in the world would we want to, you know, the president's already been talking about the importance of getting a handle on the entitlements. We should not use this bill to make that problem more complicated, more difficult. We should not use it to increase permanent spending. Entitlement is an inside the Beltway word that we all understand, but for those who are not working here, we're talking about there's an attempt underway here to use this bill to increase permanent spending. I think that's a bad idea, no matter how worthwhile the various proposals are. John?
Senator McConnell, what do you think the total price tag of this should be? We're pushing $1 trillion now in terms of the Senate version. Regardless of the specifics, what do you think about a top-line number? And also, I want to try Daschle, not specifically on Daschle, but the process. How is it that it went so long before this became public, before you knew about it, even to the point of a first round of confirmation hearing for Daschle before the Health Committee?
Let's go back to your first question. What was it again?
Top-line number.
Yeah, I mean, most of my members believe that we could pass a very robust stimulus for less than the amount currently before us. We've been throwing figures around like it was paper money. We're already looking, before we even do this, at over $1 trillion deficit for this year. We all agree that we need to do something, but I don't think we should just completely act like the amount is irrelevant. As someone mentioned the other day, one of my colleagues, just to put $1 trillion in context, if you started spending the day that Jesus was born and you spent $1 million every single day, you still wouldn't have spent $1 trillion. It's a lot of money. Now, we know we have a huge economy. We know we need to jumpstart it, but most of my members feel we can do it for less than what is currently being proposed.
Senator? And the second question on the process.
I'm going to skip the second question. Yeah.
Have you had any contact with the Majority Leader Reid or the White House and been given an indication of where Democratic leaders in the Senate and where the White House now wants this bill to go?
Well, I've just read you what the president said yesterday. I think I know where he wants it to go, and I hope that he's going to be able to put the Democratic leaders of the House and Senate in line. He needs to talk to them. He needs to let them know that the measures that they are moving forward don't meet his own standard, which I just read to you, and maybe that's what the meeting at the White House is about tonight. I hope so.
McConnell.
What do you think of the Buy America provision that's in the Senate bill? A lot of trading partners are raising concerns about this.
Yeah, not much. I don't think we ought to use a measure that is supposed to be timely, temporary, and targeted to set off trade wars when the entire world is experiencing a downturn in the economy. I think it's a very bad idea.
Should it be taken out? Would you support taking it out?
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea to put it in a bill like this, which is supposed to be about jump-starting the economy. Yeah.
Earlier in this Congress, you mentioned that this is a new Senate where there's an open debate process and amendments are offered and things of that nature. But last week, some of your members indicated that based on what had happened in finance and appropriations, that those amendments that you were offering would likely be defeated on straight vote.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still have hope that that's possible, or are you hoping that President Obama would instruct the Democrats to either go along with some of those votes or to insert some of that language that you want into the legislation before it hits the floor?
Well, first, it's a good idea that we're actually voting on amendments in the Senate again. That's a refreshing return to the traditional method of operating. We can't anticipate that we're going to win them all. I mean, there are more of them than there are of us. But I can tell you this, with regard to this measure that's on the floor this week, there is considerable, and you're hearing it, considerable Democratic senatorial unrest about this package. Considerable. I think there is a bipartisan feeling that this is not the way to get the economy moving, and hopefully we'll see that exhibited on various amendments where we may have some bipartisan success in modifying the bill and making it more in line with what I think the president was talking about yesterday.
Senator McConnell, if Democrats don't make significant changes to this bill, how many Republican votes will there be for the package along the lines of what came out of the Finance Committee? And also, Democratic leaders are working very hard to win some centrist Republicans like Lindsey Stone, George Voinovich, and Susan Collins to that bill. What are you doing to keep your folks in line and together on it?
Well, there's no way to answer the hypothetical of what the vote will be at the end because we don't know what it'll look like. Our goal is to produce a bill that makes a difference, not to kill the measure. So the goal is entirely different from what your question seems to suggest. The goal is to make it better. And we go into this with an open mind. We have two, I think, really good ideas that are entirely in line with what the president, I think, wants to do. Remember, the president said earlier he thought at least 40% of this package ought to be tax relief. I think the House-passed bill is something like 20% tax relief, and then you have to ask the question, what kind of tax relief?
And then you're, of course, listening to the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell.